We're back. It's Thursday, June 18th. I can't believe how quickly this year has gone by. When I set up the stream on, what was it, Monday or Tuesday, our little backlog of topics to talk about this week was empty. And I thought, I shouldn't say anything, but I'm going to say it because I don't believe words can make things actually happen. So I was like, it's kind of quiet this week, but I'm sure we'll find something to talk about. Lo and behold, we have something to talk about, and that is the Mastra or Maestra, however you pronounce it, compromise. We got a few other things on the list, but before we jump in, anything you want to chat about, Paul?
I'm making progress in wiring my office, so I'm hoping that next week, if not next week, I'll be able to record this in my new office, but if not that week, then the week after that. So getting there.
Exciting.
Very exciting. The Southern Hemisphere
birds.
headquarters. Southern Hemisphere headquarters for OSM.
We'll soon have electricity.
I'll put a sign up and everything. There's a sticker already, but yeah.
Okay, well, progress. Up here, up in the almost the Great White North, school is finally out for the year. I've got a kid out of school, and so now we're kind of properly getting into summer. And gosh, I really wish I could have a summer vacation. But you and I will be in Vegas in what, a couple months? Less than 2 months. We'll be there for B-Sides and DEF CON, and actually Black Hat as well. So if anybody is going to be there, let us know. We'd love to meet up. Who knows if we'll do a happy hour or what the case will be, but coffee, probably lots of water. I don't know. Vegas in August is not my favorite place to be, but it is a fun week.
I despise Vegas, right? I despise it. But that week, I love that week so much. I just get so stoked for that week that I don't care it's in Vegas. It could be in the 9th ring of hell. Well, kind of sort of the same thing.
It kind of is.
It could be in the 10th ring of hell. And I would still love that week. It's just such a dope week. I just see so many people, the absolute AppSec guys, and just it's just such a great week, man.
It is a great week. Okay, on to the meat of things. 2 days ago, my time, 1 day ago, your time, we saw a large account takeover in progress. Threat actors hijacked the entirety of the Mastra organization, which is 116 packages. And very similar to what we saw a couple months ago with the Axios compromise, they didn't actually put the malware in any of the Mastra packages. What they did is they pre-staged a typosquatted package, an easy Node.js, easy something JS. Now I can't remember what it is.
Easy day JS.
Easy day JS. So like what we see with a lot of malware, they copied an existing legitimate package, kept everything, and just gave it a snappier name. So they staged it with no malware. And then once they executed their takeover on Mastra, all they had to do was add this as a new dependency for all those packages. Et voila, you have an info stealer in your packages.
Yep.
A lot of vendors have covered what happened with this. It is almost stage for stage, step for step, the same as the Axios attack. Including the initial compromise of the account came through a social engineering, very targeted spear phishing type thing where the maintainer clicked something that, ClickFix-style kind of a, hey, there's something wrong with your microphone. Oh, I figured it out. You can click this. We saw almost the same thing happen with Axios. Paul, you did a really deep dive on it. I'll share the link to the blog that you published. I think it's a really great analysis because you went deep into the similarities between the two attacks, a little bit about the potential threat actor, which we will say anyone who's saying they know who this is or a little skeptical, we don't have a confirmed attribution. And then what it's targeting, I think, is really interesting. So have at it. I'll stop talking.
Me too. Yeah, listen, first and foremost, there's a lot of other great write-ups from Step Security and Aikido and a bunch of other companies, and mad respect to them, right? This was an opportunity for me to go deep like I used to do all the time before I, was building a startup and a business and, all these things that we're doing now, right? But so it was nice. It was a blast from the past for me able to go super deep on something. But yeah, so a couple things. First, I didn't know that the actual the compromise was happened the way you said it, because I know there's contemporaneous, like there was a couple of people that were talking on Twitter about.
So my source is somebody with the company. There's a very good, well, not very good, it could be better, but there's a pretty decent retrospective incident report on it on their GitHub issues from someone who's with the company. I didn't look up who it was. But this person said specifically that it was an employee account, that what had happened is, I'm going to read this. The maintainer is a current active Mastra employee. He was compromised via a social phishing attack. A compromised LinkedIn account reached out to him, as well as maintainers of other prominent TypeScript open source packages. He was on a call, clicked a suspicious link, and then there's an X post linked in here that says this is the same attack vector as other open source maintainers have reported. And so, yeah, it was very, very similar to what we saw with Axios.
Yeah, it does. Sounds very, very similar. I think thanks for filling that blank for me. I had read some of the Twitter posts from other people that have been targeted, in the same time frame. I hadn't seen that specific thing. So, because you know why? Because I went way deep on the malware. So, in all those other write-ups, I didn't really see a complete burn down of the malware, and I really wanted to do that because as I started looking at this, and I went really deep on the plain crypto.js package, which is what compromised, which was the malicious component that they added to, the threat actors added to Axios. I went really deep on that one, and so I had all my analyses from that, and then I had all my analyses from this new one, and I could compare them. And the malware, unlike the rest of it, the infrastructure, so basically where they hosted it, like all, and I go into a lot of that in my blog, so I'm not going to go over every single thing again, but basically from an infrastructure perspective, this looks and feels exactly like Axios. So they and
their mistake here, honestly, it could have been a lot worse, but from what I can see, the way that they handled the publishing, because these packages normally come with attestations, and there were some tells that meant it was caught extraordinarily quickly. We heard from a friend at AWS that he caught it, or they caught it within 30 seconds or 2 minutes or something really fast.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that it was caught really quickly, and and as we see these changes in the NPM ecosystem that I've talked about on other episodes, we'll start to see account takeover compromises go down, right? In the post install, this does use post install scripts, and so I think bad guys know that NPM 12 is coming, and they're trying to. I'm seeing, like this week, I'm seeing just this huge onslaught of new stuff, bad guys trying to get things in before that goes away. But the reality is that most people aren't going to upgrade to NPM 12 right away anyhow. But I digress.
I got you off track. Tell us about your analysis.
No, it's okay. So from an infrastructure perspective, this looks very similar to the Axios attack. But when you get in the malware is different. And it's a two-stage payload. And this payload here in the Mastra campaign is really focused on stealing browser extensions, which Axios was not. And so I went to the trouble of enumerating all the browser extensions, which are listed in the blog post. There's 166 of them, I think. And what's interesting about this is they're focusing on the crypto wallet stuff, which we always see, right? So whenever somebody's looking for browser extensions, they always look for crypto stuff. But in addition to that, they're looking for some stuff that's not crypto. So like roughly 20% of the browser extensions they're looking for are not crypto wallet extensions. Instead, there's things like LastPass and 1Password and Dashlane browser extensions, which those three alone, most of us are running one of those three, right? Because those are the big three: LastPass, Dashlane, and 1Password, right? Oh, Bitwarden too. So there's the top
they
four,
got all the biggies there,
right? The top 4 password manager extensions, they're looking for all 3 of those. They're exfilling all 4 of those, and a bunch of others too as well. There's like ones from Deloitte and all kinds of stuff. They're also exfilling a couple of browser-based MFA tools. And in the last one, which I think was interesting, was Zapier.
I know. I really want to talk about why you think they're interested in Zapier, because like one of these things is not like the other. Zapier is, used to send basically between things that don't have integration. So like your website doesn't have a HubSpot integration, you use Zapier in the middle and you can pull information back and forth. Why do you think that they targeted Zapier?
Well, my only guess, and that's all it is just a guess, is that, they're looking to, to pivot into other platforms that you've used Zapier to integrate to, right? Because you have to give Zapier authentication, for all these things that you're, plugging into, is to go and do the automation that Zapier is going to do. And it makes sense to go and pull it. Now, you would think, ostensibly, if they're exfilling it, if they're stealing it, then they have a way to use it, right? Which is the expectation. You don't steal stuff. You don't make your exfil package larger unless you have to. I guess the counter argument is just grab everything you can and make the exfil package as big as possible, because this is a smash and grab kind of thing. But anyhow,
sure,
I just thought it was
people are getting better about rotating credentials, like if you're not prepared to use it immediately, then it's kind of silly.
Yeah, I mean, then you've got the Team PCP thing where they're just sitting on this massive. By the way, I've got something interesting about Team PCP too as well. They're sitting on this massive cache of tokens, which are aging poorly for them, right? So people are rotating those, and so every day that goes by, now obviously somebody would make the argument that, a lot of people don't know that their tokens from Team PCP were stolen, and so they're not, they're not rotating them, which is true, but a lot of people are. And so every day that goes by, Team PCP and others like DPRK lose that. Now, here's the other thing. I wonder, I thought this in bed last night as I was going to sleep. I wonder if DPRK is like, hey, listen, this whole crypto wallet stealing thing is going well for us, but it would be nice if, the boss is really pushing our KPIs.
We got to diversify.
In the Lazarus Group Q1 meeting, they really pushed us to increase our capacity.
You're killing me over here.
And what about if we get into initial access broking? Basically selling all this stuff that we don't want, right? If we find it and we exfil it, we being DPRK, I'm pretending like I'm the threat actor here. What if we just on-sell it? Now, the funny thing about the IAB marketplaces, the more stuff that's out there, the more legitimate stuff that's out there, it drives down the prices, just like any other supply and demand, right? So if you look at the dark web, any kind of credential that there's a lot of and legitimate examples of drives the price down, with a few exceptions. However, if you're if the access that you're selling is the freshest and the best, then you're always going to get a premium, right? And I think that because DPRK isn't out there tweeting every gosh darn second, their stuff is probably a little bit fresher than maybe other threat actors.
Holds it.
Sorry, that was a
better.
spiel. Say that again. Sorry.
Oh, it holds its value better. Yeah.
Perhaps, yeah. So anyway, I think that was the most interesting thing to come out of Mastra. Mastra. Was that? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an interesting segue into one of the other things I have on our show notes. I saw a paper published on the Cloud Security Alliance's site earlier this week. And I'm going to say the paper itself isn't like earth-shattering, like crazy stuff. But the reason I want to talk about it is because we're seeing both registries and defenders starting to close gaps that are making it harder. And like, actually, ironically, I think you and I talked like last week or the week before about how we hadn't seen a social engineering generated account takeover in a while, and it happened this week.
There
But
you go.
it's getting harder, and the trend that we've been seeing is because things are getting more firmed up. Attackers are more likely to attack the machine pipe. They're trying to get into the machine path. They're trying to get into the pipeline instead of scamming a developer. Well, they're going to continue to do things along that vibe as we implement cooldown periods, as we get better at identifying account takeovers. They're going to look for other means. We've been saying this all spring. And so what I do think is worth talking about with this paper is it's specifically talking about the possibility of threat actors using your integrations with AI agents to get malware to you. And so they're trying to label it as agent jacking. Every vendor loves to coin a term. Sure, why not? I think what they've described is really just sophisticated prompt injection. But what they talk about is they take advantage of a tool called Sentry. They send it some bogus logs that have some malicious payload in there. When the developer goes to say, oh, Sentry's got this incident, or whatever the right word is to say, I need to research this. I'll just ingest the logs into Claude and figure out how to fix this. Well, the logs come in through an MCP server, which that in itself, I think, is like, okay, fine. There's lots of ways you can get logs from A to B. It doesn't have to be through an MCP server. But the point is, the logs with the malicious payload get handed over to Claude or whatever agent. And then much like what we saw last year with the NX Singularity attack, where the agents were weaponized to scrape for credentials, that's the exact same thing that we're seeing here. So long story short, I'm not sure that this paper is all that interesting, but it does illustrate what it would look like to take the human mostly out of the equation, which is what attackers are going to increasingly want to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think...
And I'm going to share the paper because I know I'm being really vague about it, but I don't really want to promote this vendor because I think it's a little vendory. So,
well, that's where I was going with this, because I'm the rampaging, spicy jerk face that I am. I mean, to me, this read like this was a PR release from the company, and it turns out it's actually a CSA cloud security, which I'm a member of. I don't know if I'm a paying member or not, but it's just it felt kind of gross and vendory to me. But and like you, I think that what they're describing and them calling it agent jacking, I think ultimately a lot of this just comes down to behavior that I see when people build MCP servers, which is they built them a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, really, really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And they just, when you look at MCP servers, you see basically a smorgasbord of the OWASP top 10, all encapsulated in many.
Like, how many mistakes can we make with one technology?
Right?
Let's put it all in one place.
The over provisioning and the exposure of credentials and just like all these things in one thing. So it's not surprising to see that it's taking advantage of the MCP server, the Sentry MCP servers, to do its bidding. I guess that's not surprising to me. I also want to mention, and this is something I mentioned to you, is that Sentry, like I've been seeing this in my malware analysis for maybe not a couple years, but it's been a while. It's been over a year for sure. Maybe probably a couple years, where DPRK in particular, like as soon as I see, like if I see two things, Jenna, if I see a file like index.js is obfuscated and I start looking at it and I see the first thing it imports is the Sentry IO library, DPRK, like it's just, I mean, those two
little
things
calling
alone,
card right there.
right? And any other researcher listening right now probably thinking the same thing, laughing. But they've been using Sentry for ages to exfil they're stolen goods, and it makes a lot of sense because we needed to coin a new term like living off the SaaS or living off the vendor or whatever. Like
an
you're
alternative
taking
to living off the land. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're hiding in normal Sentry traffic, right? It looks legit. So it makes sense to use it. And sure enough, it's the first thing, pretty much the first thing. Well, they'll import a couple things, FS and HTTP, and then they import Sentry. So anyhow.
Yeah, and I think that another perhaps I'm going to call it a criticism of this paper is it talks about why your security processes can't catch this agent jacking, and it's very SecOps focused. It's very focused on EDR. Yep. And while they're not wrong, the same can also be said for most malicious open source because the threat actors are very good at hiding their activity in benign looking things. They'll spin up a Vercel endpoint, or they'll use a Bitcoin wallet or something like that. So what we do need to work on as an industry is understanding that our SecOps practices are built up around different types of compromises, cloud, coming in through email, but not so much recognizing anomalous behavior in the software development lifecycle. And that, it comes back to harden your agents, least privilege, use a sandbox.
Maybe don't use some MCP server they just found on the internet, right?
Well, I mean, the key in this is actually the MCP server is not dangerous. It's that it's taking untrusted data from Sentry, because Sentry will look like you put a third-party submission into Sentry. The MCP server here is a bit of a red herring. There's nothing malicious about it. It's just untrusted input into the LLM.
Well, that's exactly my point. You made my point for me. Let's apply the same thing to the MCP server.
Yeah, it should be saying no
to web apps, right? Let's validate this input that you're about to pass on here, but it doesn't. It just passes it on, right? Which is web app, pen testing 101, right? Hardening 101. Listen, I think from when you were talking about earlier, I think the main thing I was hearing from you was that they go out of their way to talk about EDR not catching this, and like you said, that's true. But it's also why are you calling out that tool? That tool never, if you're an enterprise expecting your EDR to do that, well then I'm sorry, you don't understand what your EDR tool does, right? It's like somebody calling out, well, see, you had all these soldiers on the ground with M16s. Why couldn't they shoot down the MiG-29? You're like, well, the MiG-29 is traveling at 500 miles an hour. That's not what that tool was designed for. Anyhow, sorry, rant over.
Okay. Before we move on, got a little happy to share.
Nice.
We have Joshua here. Great information so far. Enjoying the learning and bookmark all of these. Awesome. Glad you're liking it. Always good to have a note. Anybody else who's listening, send us a note so we know we're not in this room by ourselves.
Drink some coffee to Joshua here.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. Maybe the theme of this show is old man yells at cloud. I don't know if you know that reference, but I'm gonna.
Am I the old man in this reference?
No, I'm the old man.
Okay.
So you probably watched a show at some point called Mythbusters. We're gonna do some myth busting on malware myths, and the reason I wanted to do this today is I listened to a podcast earlier this week featuring a leader from an application security company. And that's all I'm going to say. I don't want to call out the person specifically or the company or the podcast because much of what they shared was useful, but there were some things that they said that were wrong. And I don't necessarily believe in calling out wrong things for the sake of it, but rather these are wrong things that are legitimately harmful if people believe them. And so I want to talk about them. So the first thing that this person said is malware only lives for between a couple hours, maybe up to 3 days. And that is just patently false. I'm going to check right now while you talk about why it's false, because I want to look up and see if this package we've been talking about for a while is still live. So you tell the people.
Channel.
Yeah.
There's another one, Events Runtime. They're actually from different threat actors, but they both have been up for 5 weeks or something. They
Yeah.
both
So
have
explain why is 3 days just a lie?
Yeah. I mean, listen, are we getting, at the heart of this myth is a truth, which is that with these large account takeover where the maintainer has been compromised, the industry, us, the security researchers, are finding these things much quicker. NPM's not, but anyhow, besides the point. So that part is true. But then extrapolating that, Jen, to then say that all open source malware, all software supply chain malware only lives for 3 days or less is just patently. I love how you said it, because I literally said the same thing from stage the other day at the conference. It's just patently, materially not true. The reality is that the non-compromise ATO style takeovers, right? Which, by the way, most of the AppSec companies aren't scanning with the same frequency. They're not looking for it in the same frequency that they are.
Yeah, they're focused on good things going bad, not bad things being bad.
And part of that, and I say this a lot, part of that is because the AppSec companies or the scanning companies, again, we're not going to say names for any of these, are buying into a myth, which is that, typosquatting and dependency confusion are not, like, people with mature AppSec programs don't fall prey to these things. And that's just not true. I see it all the time. Because here's the difference. I'm just going to say it. I'm brutal. The difference is that all you AppSec companies, you don't do incident response, right? You build a product, and your companies, when they get popped, they have to do their own incident response. I've been doing incident response for years, and I've been seeing the fact that typosquatting and dependency confusion have been affecting some of the largest, most mature, from an AppSec perspective, companies for years. So the reality is that those things, and the ones that Jen's looking up, events channel, events runtime, it just,
they're still alive, was going to be my point. We've been talking about some relatively sophisticated typosquat packages for maybe a month now. They've been reported to NPM. They are incontrovertibly malicious. They are copies of existing legitimate packages. And this is something that threat actors do, is kind of that more, instead of the, I'm going to hit you as fast as I can and steal all your stuff and you have no idea what's going on. This is the more tactical, like, I'm going to slip this thing in. You're never going to know you consumed it. You're going to think you consumed a safe thing. And the reason that they hang around a long time, they're twofold. One is what you talked about, Paul, is they're a little bit, I won't say harder to find, but it takes a little bit more effort to find them, because you're not just looking at diffs and saying, oh, well, the old one looked like this and the new one has a nasty payload. Don't use that. Right. So that's one reason. But the other,
which is hard enough, just doing that. That's
it is hard
enough, right?
Like, let's be clear, that is hard. So it is hard to find these. But the other reason they have such a long shelf life is NPM is not taking them down. When they get reported, and they're being reported, like in our case, by credible researchers, they're not getting taken down. And one thing that I thought was interesting in a disappointing kind of way is I looked at that EasyDay.js package yesterday or the day before when it got published, and what NPM had done at the time, I'm going to look it up again because I'm curious, is they had removed the malicious version, but they didn't kill the package or the entirety of it. They left, I'm looking right now, the original version, 1.11.21, is still live. So they've done a weird thing here where that is a known threat actor controlled package that they have left live for, who knows, to slip something into again in the future. Anyway, this is a long rant to say malware only living 3 days is wrong. Don't get trapped by that. Yes, cooldown periods are very effective and good, and you should do them, and you should use your package firewalls and your private registries to like catch these things that turn bad quickly. But just understand, anyone who tells you, oh, you don't have to worry if it's been longer than 3 days, like they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, I really wish I could cuss, but I'm not going to. That's bullpucky, right? And with that EasyDay.js, right? Clearly the person at NPM, right, doesn't understand the sequence of events because they've left that package up. That package was not a pre-existing package by that maintainer, which is your point, right? I'm just going a little bit deeper here, just to say the person at NPM saw that, thinks, oh, that's owned by a legitimate person that was attacked, not realizing that that package, even though that one's not malicious, that's the decoy, that package was built specifically by the threat actor. Doesn't get that.
Yeah.
And that's just a perfect example of why we still have this problem. Even when NPM is moving on these things, they don't understand, because most of the senior people there are gone, right? And they're relying on a bunch of people, anyhow. I'm not here to, I'm not here to listen. I'm not attacking NPM staff. What I'm saying though is that NPM and Microsoft and GitHub have not done what they need to do, which is increase their teams and build their teams and keep retention low. I mean, keep retention high. They're not doing those things.
Yeah.
Sorry, rant you over.
Well, second item, we've got 4 myths to bust here. The
I just
second
added
myth,
this one in real.
I know, I saw, I was watching. They also said NPM install scripts are going away. Not accurate. NPM install scripts are not going away. They are needed to make many packages function correctly. What is happening is they're going to become opt-in by default rather than opt-out by default. Which is good, but they're not going away. Okay. The next thing that they said was package firewalls and cooldowns will eliminate 99% of risk. This is wrong for the same reason that malware only lives 3 days is wrong. I don't think I need to belabor that one. But the one I do want to talk about a little bit more at length, and it ties into what you said, Paul, about incident response as a mindset versus prevention as a mindset. This person said they don't care who the attackers are behind these software supply chain attacks. They don't care. They don't think we should care. They don't think it matters. And that is true from a prevention stance. It doesn't matter who's behind it. If you can prevent it from coming in, you prevent it from coming in. But it does matter who's behind it if you didn't prevent it, because and I'm sure there's some like ridiculous, I don't know, criminal like law enforcement parallel that we could make here. Like, you need to know if it's the mob or your neighbor's kid who stole from you, because there's really different ways that you're going to go about getting your bike back, right? I don't know why it's your bike. I don't think the mob's going to steal your bike, Paul.
They're not going to steal my bike.
But the point
I do have a new bike.
I know. I really want to hear about your new bike. Maybe not today. The point I'm trying to make is you do actually need to know who the attacker is to the best that you can, because that's going to help you understand, okay, what is their next step going to be? If it's, traditionally DPRK, North Korea, they're after theft of cryptocurrency, financial gain. Okay, so they're probably not going to be, doing ransomware. Team PCP, they're after your credentials. They want to get into whatever you have access to and get on to the next thing. So like understanding who they are, like their, criminal psychology, I guess, helps you know how to respond to it.
And their tradecraft, right? Like to your point, if it's DPRK, if it's DPRK, they know, you know that there's gonna be persistence via invisible ferret or otter cookie, right? You know what to look for, right? If you don't spend the time figuring out who the bad guy is, you're not going to know where to look for things like what is a persistence mechanism, where are they holding the files, what registry keys are in, like all those kind of things that you need when you're doing incident response. And again, I'm just going to take another opportunity. That's an observation made by somebody that's never had to do incident response for a software supply chain attack. Full stop.
All right. I think this is a good place for us to end today, because we do have on our backlog, we want to talk about DPRK trends in software supply chain malware. Yeah, but we've been going for a little over half an hour, and that one could take some time.
And I still have to write the blog post, right? So we want to do the 1-2 combo.
So next week, I think we'll plan on talking about what's going on with Lazarus Group, how they're evolving their malware. What I will leave people with is, again, this comes back to, it kind of does matter who the attackers are. We've been seeing trend-wise Lazarus Group doing innovations in the space of malware and then that getting picked up by other threat actors. As far as we know, they're the first threat actor to really abuse VS Code task.json files, for example. So yeah, it matters.
Everybody's doing it, right?
Yeah, now
everybody's
everyone's
using
doing
VS Code. 100%. Yeah,
right
I think this is gonna be a really good one. Let's hope there's no big attacks next week that will then, knock the DPRK innovation conversation to the next week. But let's cross our fingers.
Yeah, for many reasons. We hope there's no big attacks between now and the next week. Yeah,
there might be something to talk about in terms of Team PCP next week too, as well. So we'll tease that as well. So
okay, right on. I look forward to it. In the meanwhile, now that we're done with our rants, let's go take a breath and get on with our days. Have a good one.
Thanks everybody for listening. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Sorry, I talked over you. Bye.